It was actually a Harvard degree. Radcliffe had merged with Harvard educationally during World War II. Although I will say this, Radcliffe still had separate admissions. So there were, every year, Harvard admitted 1,200 men, and Radcliffe admitted 300 women. So who was the more selective? Who was the more outstanding?
Yeah. No, I get that. And anybody of your generation prior, we know any woman in those, there wasn't just one or two schools, they're smart as anyone over here, right? So that's just the way it was. And that was true in Virginia too. But so when did, I thought I heard you say in Chapel Hill that there was some activism somewhere that I don't really see on a standard legal scholar's resume. Where was that? Where did it hit early on?
I became active, I would say, in grade school. I started writing letters to the editor and letters to my United States Senator, who was Hubert H. Humphrey, whom I still greatly admire. He was a big pioneer in civil rights, among other important issues. And by the time I got to what was then called junior high school, now it's called middle school, as a preteen, I was involved in speaking out against efforts to suppress free speech and academic freedom on the part of some teachers. By high school, there was actually an effort to, by the local newspaper, calling for the firing or some disciplinary action against a social studies teacher who had showed us, I was 15 years old at the time, the war in Vietnam was fairly popular, was very popular, fairly
you were
new.
right in the heart of that, and that was so big.
And a lot of people had relatives who were off fighting there, and it was seen as very unpatriotic and disrespectful to individuals to even question what the United States was doing over there. And this teacher was not indoctrinating us. I recognize now that it was an excellent form of teaching. He simply showed us slides of some images of civilian casualties and other impacts of the United States war effort. No narration at all, just the pictures. And that itself was so controversial that, as I say, the local newspaper editorialized for his removal.
Especially early on, right?
So I wrote a letter to the editor of the paper. I started a petition drive among my students, fellow students, to support the teacher. And I do remember, that was one of a number of such efforts. I remember one of my teachers saying to me, "Oh, Nadine, why are you always standing up for the underdog?" And she said that as if it was a criticism. And I thought, no, I'm proud of that. And I hadn't articulated it to myself yet, Doug, but now I understand. It's, of course, the underdog that needs the advocacy, right? Just the way it's the unpopular or the controversial or the dissonant speech that needs to be defended.
Yeah, hello. I mean, you know, but so you had that underdog. You loved the underdog early on in life, and for reasons you probably didn't even appreciate. The other thing is you've got such a quick brain that you get it quickly, and so when you figure out things faster, it leads you down certain pathways faster. So without a whole lot of elaboration. Not that you have been, what was it like being a woman at Harvard at that time? What kind of?
So I had 7 years of higher education at Harvard, 4 undergraduate and 3 at the law school. And in the entire experience, I had only 1 female instructor that was at the college, and she had just started, so she was an assistant professor with no tenure. At the law school, I had 0 female instructors. At the undergraduate level, there was a fixed ratio of 4 males to every female. At the law school, there wasn't a fixed ratio, but very few women were admitted, so only 10% of my classmates were female. We were distinct minorities, and I do think that sadly, that had somewhat of a chilling impact on my ability or willingness to speak up. People who know me now are surprised about that. But I wasn't surprised to see somebody like Hillary Clinton emerged from Wellesley and other women who emerged from single-sex, all-women schools with more leadership and more self-confidence than many of us were able to develop in an overwhelmingly male environment. Now, that said, Doug, everywhere I speak to this day, even though there are so many female faculty members, and at most institutions, women students are a majority now,
By far.
and yet, who asks the questions? Who makes the comments during public events and even during classes? It's overwhelmingly the men. And I find that so mystifying and so frustrating. So it's not lack of role models, it's not being a distinct minority, there's something else. And this is anecdotal, I don't have any scientific evidence, but I'm constantly comparing notes everywhere I speak with women faculty members and students, and they observe the same pattern.